Get ready.
You're listening to Pirated Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Pirated Radio. Sorry I've taken a little bit of a break and I haven't uploaded anything in a couple of weeks. I just didn't have anything to upload, to be honest with you. This episode's a little bit different. I was invited on another podcast called the Chatabox podcast by the lovely lads that run it, called Elliot and Jack, and they essentially asked me about my career thus far and any advice that I might have for students and people in the design industry and things like that. And we spoke a little bit about how I first got into design and all different things like that. And I thought it'd be a good thing to upload because I haven't taken the opportunity to kind of introduce myself on this yet. And I sort of realised that there's people who may be listening to this that don't actually know me in person. So it'd be a nice thing to kind of get a bit of an introduction, which I probably should have done at the start when I first started this, but you live and let die, don't you, I guess. But yeah, that's it, pretty much. I hope you enjoy.
Good evening, everyone who is tuned in to listen. This is Jack White on the Chatabox podcast, streaming on a multitude of platforms, and I am joined with my co-host.
Hi everyone, my name is Elliot Oakes, and welcome back. Hope you guys have been doing well and enjoying the podcast so far. You know, we've been having some absolutely amazing guests on, which we hope you've been finding really interesting. So as you know, me and Jack are both in the film industry, and you know, we speak a lot about the pre-production aspects. However, today we're switching things up and we're delving into the post-production, specifically motion and graphic design.
That's right. And in today's episode, we are joined with Brian Dowley. He doesn't like to call me he doesn't like me to call him a podcaster. However, he is a podcaster. He's a digital artist and graphic design student at Staffordshire University. Am I right to say you're from Stoke?
Yep. Stoke-on-Trent, born and bred up the Potters.
Lovely. I think I've worked up Stoke a few times actually, working with the BBC, but I was just recalling the places I've been to, be honest. But no, I do remember it being a lovely place. So Brian, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and what you sort of do?
I'm at university at the moment. I've been interested in graphic design for about 10 years now. I've dabbled in all sorts. I've done a bit of motion design, done a bit of 3D design, like very briefly when I first got into things. But yeah, I love typography and I'd love to maybe go into type design once I've graduated.
Yeah, jack of all trades, really.
Yeah, you definitely sound like you delved in a lot of things there. Is it like kinetic typography in particular, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, I have done a bit of kinetic typography. I had an apprenticeship in 2016, 2017 for a company called I Move Home. And as a part of that, I was doing social media posts for them. And I gradually kind of learned how to do a bit of motion, kinetic type, doing it within that.
Yeah, no, so I was just going to ask, so why did you sort of choose to study design and graphic design then? Because how long have you been studying it for at the moment?
It's a bit of a long story. So I got into graphics at the beginning because I don't know if you used to play like Call of Duty. I'll go right back to the start.
Oh, yeah.
But when you used to play COD and you used to have like clans in Call of Duty and you'd have like a logo for it. I got into it through that and I thought the logos were really cool. And I used to just design for like phase count and things like that. I used to design the logos for that. And that's how I got into it originally.
That's so cool.
I just essentially bumped into like a YouTube tutorial and I followed it, got a version of Photoshop and followed it. And then it just sort of snowballed from there. And then this was sort of year 9, year 10 in school. And then I graduated from school. It was to the point where, you have like a name on the back of your school shirt. Mine had templates on the back of it because people used to look at what I'd done and go, "You haven't done that. You've used a template for it," just to like take the mickey out of it. I was in school and I was doing it in school. That's how long ago it was, and that was like I graduated in 2014, things like that. But I graduated. I went to college from September of 2014 to, I want to say, February of 2017 I left because I didn't enjoy it. From there, I started an apprenticeship in sort of August. And in between sort of things, I'm just doing stuff constantly, essentially.
Yeah.
In August, I started my apprenticeship with I Move Home, as I said. That lasted 6 months. And then, what did I do from there? Then I went back to college again. And I think I was there for a month because again, I just didn't enjoy it very much. Then I went to college again. Yeah. I think after that one, I did a year. And then at this point I was like 20 and I was sat in college thinking I'm too old to be in college. So I applied for uni just because it said one of the things with staffs is on the page, it says we'll interview you, like essentially you're guaranteed an interview essentially when you apply. So I thought I'll just see if I can just,
go for it.
Yeah, essentially, and just waffle my way into getting onto the course.
Yeah.
I applied, they gave me an interview. They said, yeah, but I ended up doing a foundation year. So I did a foundation year, started my degree, and I'm in my second year now, about to go into my third one in sort of September onwards, and then I'll graduate next year.
Yeah. And it goes goes without saying, never stick with something that you're not enjoying, because like you said, you've moved across different courses here, there and everywhere.
Yeah.
And if you don't enjoy something, don't feel as though you need to sort of stick with it. I'm speaking to everyone at the moment. It's just like a lot of people do, they take a course and they feel like, oh, I'm stuck with this now, I've paid for it, that's it, this is my job forever.
Yeah.
I mean, and what's super interesting there, Brian, is the fact that, you say you moved around all the time, and although that is taking up time, whilst you're doing that, you are learning stuff as you go, as you know, within the industry. Even if you just do dabble with a couple of things here and there, it's never really wasted, is it? You are learning new skills all the time, and that can always be added to your portfolio. So although you say that, you're 20, too old for college, well, maybe it could have been a bit too old, or, there's no really right or wrong with it. But either way, that all that work you've been working up to, it's in your head and you can use it in a portfolio.
Exactly. Yeah, no, definitely. I think had I not have done the route that I've done, I wouldn't be where I am now. So, because it's like everything's kind of built up. I learned how to do After Effects with my apprenticeship, and like, had I not joined college at a certain time, I wouldn't have learned like about the Bauhaus, which is a big inspiration to me now, and all different things like that. So everything's added up over time, definitely. And, as you said, you can sort of, not to kind of spur this off into a different direction, but with sort of the advent of like YouTube and things like that, you can just learn whatever anyway, can't you now? Free of cost, essentially.
That's very true.
If you want to learn graphics, you can go and do that on YouTube for free. Well, any time of the day, take as long as you want to do it. If you want to learn motion design, you just do it on YouTube, essentially, don't you, and everything like that.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you question, doesn't it? Is it worth spending a lot of money on a degree when you can self-learn? Because something I've noticed within the filmmaking industry in particular is you don't necessarily need a degree in order to get your foot in the industry.
Yeah.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess the same for motion graphics and graphic design side of things, right?
Yeah.
Because it's based on portfolio, isn't it? You're going to get hired based on your skills, your expertise, not necessarily a degree.
Yeah. I think that's what I started the podcast for, kind of, because we're doing assessment in uni at the moment where we've got to write an essay on anything that they let you choose an essay. And the topic that I ended up picking was it was people that were making a living creating content on the industry as opposed to actually working industry, if that makes sense. So it's people that make YouTube videos on design or movies and things like that, as opposed to working on movies or working in design and things like that, because you can make a healthy living off of doing that, can't you, right now really? And you don't need a degree to do that. And I think you could, as a student right now, you could graduate, start a YouTube channel. It might take you a year or two to get to a point where you're making enough money to go monthly on it, but you could graduate, start a YouTube channel, and then never even touch industry, couldn't you, just by making content online? And that's not even touching, Twitch. You could do Etsy if you wanted to. You could do Skillshare. You could do, you could sell courses online. You could sell assets online and all different stuff like that.
Yeah, I think COVID sort of like gave people the opportunity to try these new things involving digital art and graphic design. I mean, Elliot was saying before we started recording that how vast the industry has grown since COVID, and it's just given so many people much more opportunities and much more time to just try out these things and figure out for themselves if they want to do graphic design. And I think it's been a really good thing for the industry. But in terms of, obviously you've been studying throughout COVID, I'm guessing. What's it been like? Is anything changed or?
Personally, no, the course that I've been on, I've done a really good job of kind of switching things around for us and sort of implementing learning digital, like virtually and things like that. We get, and they've also done this thing where they've moved all the tables around actually, and so we were in like 1 day a week as soon as we can get in, whereas other unis have they've just done everything online from last March up to now. We've been lucky enough that we've been able to go in like in spurts and things like that because they've moved all the furniture around. They've made everything like super duper safe, which has been really helpful.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, because you want to try and get as much practical experience as possible, really, don't you? Just going back a bit then to maybe a touchy subject. You said there that you had template written on your back in the day, and I'm quite curious because, as you know, in the industry it can be quite judgmental. Yeah. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, how do you deal with criticism?
I personally haven't really had, when I was in school and people would say you've used a template, it was only they were just jibes. They weren't necessarily like proper criticism. And I've personally, whether it's just me, I've never really come across that much. I don't know, I get a lot. I think when people do, it eats away at me I think personally, if somebody has ever criticised my work, but I can only ever think of maybe 2 times where I've had somebody's proper sat down and said, I don't like what you're doing. And that was when some guy did it on Twitter once. Yeah. And this was like when I first started, like it's just when I was like 14. And then I went for like an internship a couple of years ago. And I got there and the guy sat me down and he looked at my work and he just went, your work's not very good, is it? And I just sort of, it took me back a bit. And I can remember I had his business card and I can remember being sat in the car and looking at his business card and going, yeah, but the stuff that you've done on this is crap. You know, your type isn't set properly and stuff like that.
Yeah. Twitter's notorious, isn't it, for hate?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Twitter's just kind of, if you're posting work there, I think you're looking for, you have to take it on the chin a bit, don't you? As bad as that sounds.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm just kind of wondering, how did you kind of work through the criticism then? Was it anything in particular, or?
I don't really know. I don't think I ever did.
You just answered back, didn't you? You just had a go at them, didn't you?
I didn't have a go at it. I was sat in the car by myself doing it. I don't know. I've always I think over time you kind of forget about these things. And in the grander scheme of things, no matter how much flack you take, there's always going to be more people supporting you than there is trying to, giving you a load of crap for your work, isn't there? If you take a step back, take a step back, there's going to be, your friends, your family, all those kind of people who are going to be egging you on. Even if there's, 4 people that have, however many years you've been doing things, have said, oh, no, it's crap, that is.
Yeah, I know what I mean. Okay. I mean, for someone who might be, let's say, new to graphic design then, and they wanted to sort of get their foot through the right door, what sort of advice would you offer them now?
I don't know, because I haven't got my foot through the right door yet.
Okay, where are you hoping to be then in the future?
Let me think. So if I was to give a piece of advice to somebody getting in the industry right now, it would be, don't go to uni, learn everything through YouTube. And also you don't need clients to make work either. You can make work for yourself, and some of it may end up being your favorite work that you've ever made. Even if you do end up having clients, the stuff that you do just for fun may end up being the stuff that you cherish the most. So I'd say do it as much as you can. Really, throw yourself into it. Do it as often as you can. If you can do something daily, do something, which is a lot to ask, of course, but if you can do something daily, like you look at, I don't know if you've seen Beeple, who's done the NFT stuff. He's been doing a piece of work daily for the last 10 years and he's just made something like 3 million off of it. So It shows that if you can, if you can crack on every single day, you'll carry on getting better, because it's like if you can do something for 10,000 hours, that's how you master something, isn't it? I believe so. Just put the time in, no matter what. Keep going with it, even if life's throwing crap at you or whatever. Just keep pushing through and going with it, and you'll get to somewhere eventually. Definitely, someone will spot and go, they're putting a lot of work into what they're doing, and it shows, and then they'll just pull you along, I guess, won't they?
Yeah. And when you say spot as well, would you say like the majority of the jobs involving graphic design are based on offers, or is it something that you sort of have to try and go for yourself? Because I mean, like you said, it depends on how much work you're putting into these sort of things. Yeah. And do you have to be noticed, or do you just sort of apply for these jobs, send them your portfolio, and fingers crossed?
Yeah. I think that it's a lot. We've been told a few times that it can often be just knowing people more than anything. Yeah. And I think, connecting with people on sites, getting on sites like LinkedIn and things like that, definitely, they can help with that kind of thing. But yeah, just get yourself a portfolio up, do a crap load of work, pick some cool stuff out of the portfolio, and then just get it up and then get it sent off to as many people as you can,
I mean, speaking of a portfolio there, what have you got anything that you're really proud of that you just can't wait to show people? Is there something that's top of your show reel or portfolio that you're just so proud of?
At the moment, I've got an Instagram account where I'm trying to make a poster every day for a year. So maybe that.
Oh, cool.
That sounds quite demanding on your creativity, isn't it? Because it's hard to get motivated sometimes to upload every day.
Oh no, definitely. Yeah.
If you pull that off, that's impressive.
Well, I've started at the beginning of the year. Yeah. I'm up to like 104 maybe at the moment.
Oh wow,
that's impressive.
I'll have to follow it now.
Yeah, definitely. And it's quite clear as well, Brian, that you're quite a motivated person. I'm just wondering, what would you say then that keeps you motivated?
Just seeing if I can do it, really. One of the reasons I got a degree to begin with was to just show myself that I can do it, really, more than anything.
Okay.
And I think it's just kind of, I just want to do it for myself. And I think a lot of the time, if you can find the motivation in yourself to do something, you've got all of the power in the world to do whatever, haven't you, really?
Yeah. Back to the question I asked you earlier. I know you said you didn't really have an answer for it, but professionally, what is your goal? I mean, where would you love to be in 10 years' time if you had to pick? Sort of.
I do.
Classic question, isn't it?
Yeah, I do have some goals. I've got like a list of goals. I'd like to do some work for Nike.
Yeah.
I'd love to do some work for some like a football team, maybe. I'd love to go into teaching.
Big bucks.
Yeah. Well, not big bucks. It's more so just personal stuff. I think it'd be cool working in the football industry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Teaching. I think if in 10 years' time I was a lecturer somewhere, I'd be really happy with that. I love teach. I think I found over the last sort of year with sort of doing a lot of stuff at home from COVID, I found that I prefer discussing design a lot more than I do actually doing designs. And that seems like the best place, if teaching seems like the best place to go with that. But the main three was I've always wanted to work for Nike because I think Nike are really cool as just a company and everything like that. Work for a football club. Oh yeah, and possibly become a type designer. Although I've looked at some of the stuff you have to do to become, not necessarily the training or anything like that, but all the finicky stuff that goes into designing a typeface. It takes ages and it's a pain in the bum.
Yeah, that's fair, and I completely understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah,
but the goals you've set, they are quite fun, aren't they? Let's be honest, they sound really fun. So have you got any influencers or people that you're inspired by? Or
I've got a couple. I've been thinking about this over COVID a lot, who maybe my bigger inspirations are. But I think there's a gentleman called Aaron Draplin that I really enjoy.
Okay.
And he's got a lot of enthusiasm and sort of a spirit in terms of design I really like. Chris Doe, I don't know if you know The Future, he's a really cool gentleman.
Oh yeah.
Peter Saville, I love the work of Peter Saville. Looking at the sort of the design world in general, I really like Damien Hirst, and I like the work of Jackson Pollock.
Back a bit
and
there
I like
to
the work
and the
of
fact
Ray
that you like the concept of teaching.
They're
hear a lot about this, and maybe you can help me out. But especially in the visual effects industry, the terminology of burnout is used quite a bit. People last anywhere from 10 to 20 years, and then they leave because they're completely burnt out. Their creativity is just it's just worn out. Is this a thing within the graphic design world?
I've seen people that have been doing this for 50, 60 years. Okay. Personally, I don't know if that's just a perspective thing, but I've seen people that have done this all their life. But I don't know. I don't know if teaching is for everyone. I think design is the type of thing where you can do it until the day that you die, can't you? Because it's not necessarily particularly physically demanding. You could do it if you were 99 and you wanted to design a logo. You just pick up a pencil and doodle, don't you? Do you know what I mean?
Do you have a Fiverr account? Do you take commissions?
No, I don't really like Fiverr. If it's kind of it's
too competitive.
There's just so many people on Fiverr. It's like, I don't know if you've seen on Twitter as well. If you type hashtag logo, or you type I need a logo into Twitter, the amount of replies that you get is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think that is a thing as well. I think it's just going to grow as well, because I think the way that people speak to each other is come on leaps and bounds, especially with COVID and stuff like that. If you want to speak to somebody if I wanted to do some work with somebody in Africa or in, China, Japan, somewhere like that, I just get them on a call. It might mess up my sleeping schedule, but I just get them on a call, and we'd have a discussion. There may be a language barrier, but we'd have a discussion, and then we'd get on with some work. So I think that the idea that, graphic design maybe used to be a bit of a closed off thing, but with the advent of service of websites like Fiverr and things like that, and especially now with Teams and Zoom and everything like that, the amount of people that do graphics is just going to keep multiplying and multiplying and multiplying until there's a million jobs. And also with AI I think is going to just get rid of a certain portion, especially the sort of the Fiverr things, because people that go onto Fiverr aren't looking for a professionally designed. Say if they're looking for a logo, that they want to pay 10 to 15 quid, don't they, for a logo? It's not a corporation isn't going to go on Fiverr and look for a logo. And I think AI can do those sort of generic, £15 logos. AI will take over all of that market eventually.
It's quite scary when you think about it, isn't it? AI completely taking over.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's inevitable, because obviously technology is always advancing.
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's inevitable. Brian, do you feel that over time AI is going to be completely taking over the industry to the extent where there won't be any more motion or graphic designers left?
I think that I spoke to a gentleman called Ian Pageant about this. He does a podcast called the Logo Geek Podcast. I spoke to him briefly about it, and he mentioned how he doesn't necessarily see, VR. He doesn't see that becoming sort of a mainstream thing in the near future. And I kind of agree with that. I don't see people lugging, big massive. At least I don't know if you've used VR, but you wear it for like 10 minutes and then you're just sweating. So can you imagine doing that?
Yeah, we actually had an episode just on VR the other day, and we had to talk. We were talking about some of like the old VR machines they used to use back in the day. I mean, the first ever VR machine. Oh, we had a good laugh about that. But
Yeah,
it's just a
100%.
massive machine, and you have all these different like stimuluses, and it's just mad. Yeah, it's how VR has developed, and the stuff you can do with it now. It's extraordinary.
Oh no, definitely, it's mental. It's just people that have been, especially people that are working in the industry for 40 years. I can't imagine a group of people that work in a design agency now all sitting there with a headset on doing stuff in AR and VR. I think as maybe this generation, sort of the 18 to sort of 25 generation come into sort of positions more higher up the chain, I could see that definitely AR and things like that. Mark Zuckerberg has touched on the idea of people teleporting to work instead of commuting to work.
It's mad, isn't it?
Just through like visual, like AR stuff and VR, which is mental.
Yeah.
But I think
It just thinks like, where's the world going to be in 100 years' time?
I know it's a mad thought, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mad when you actually sit down and think about it because, as we just discussing, technology is always advancing and you just don't know where things will be in 100 years for sure. I just got one more question then, Brian, and that is, throughout your journey of being a digital designer, has anything ever been like quite challenging that's had to really push you to your absolute limits?
I don't know. I've maybe struggled. I've sometimes sat and thought, is this for me? I've struggled with that sometimes, especially when you've been thinking, you've been doing this for quite a while. I've been treading water for a long time. I think given how long I've been doing this, I think I'd maybe like to be somewhere a bit higher up the chain. But I'm only really just starting at the same time. So if you think we're I'm in my early 20s. I think I've got a long time to go.
Oh yeah, you're still young, mate. You still got. I mean, me and Elliot are only 20 as well. We're still sort of like figuring out where we want to go and what we want to do. It's just one of those things, isn't it? You spend the 20s, you sort of 20s figuring that out, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, Brian, it's been absolutely lovely speaking with you. I think it's really good for us as well because Elliot's obviously into this sort of thing. I'm not so much, but it's sort of making me want to try it out for myself now. But honestly, yeah, it's been great speaking to you. And make sure anyone who's listening to check out Brian's podcast. It's called Pirated Radio, which is on, I guess you're on a multitude of platforms as well, right?
Yeah, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I've got on everything essentially, I think, at the moment.
Brilliant. Yeah, so check them out. And do you have a Twitter page or Instagram you want to shout out or anything?
I've got my Instagram is @piratedmaterial.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. Be sure to go and check that out, guys. Brian talks a lot more about digital design and graphic design on his actual podcast. He goes a lot more in depth. But, hopefully today this podcast gave you an insight to what it's like to be a graphic designer during a global pandemic. And as you can tell, he's doing an absolute class job. He smashed today's podcast.
Exactly. Elliot.
So, thanks ever so much for today, Brian.
No, that's fine. Thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Stay tuned for the Chatabox podcast, where we will be broadcasting every week on Mondays. So please do get in touch and please do follow us on Twitter @thechatterbox, and we will keep you informed. Thank you all so much for listening. Take care and good night.
Hello again, it's just me. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was insightful in some way. If you know me in person and none of that was insightful, I am sorry. If after that you want to interact with me online, you can find me online on Instagram @piratedmaterial. PIRATEDMATERIAL. That is Pirated Material. And I'm on TikTok too now. If you want to follow me on TikTok, that's the exact same username. And I'm trying to post on there daily, so drop us a follow. And also, I think if you leave a review, if you're listening to this on iTunes, well, not iTunes, if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts, if you leave me a review, that helps with the algorithm and things like that. So that would be very much appreciated. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. See you next time. George isn't here because I killed him, by the way.